following it announced a nearly $5 billion accounting charge, also delayed the debut of its 777X jetliner. Shares have been back and forth. Now they're up less than 0.5%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. I'm Lisa Mateo. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Fitch is up 18, looked at the market, pulled back, came back again. The China and U.S. meeting, 11 a.m. Paul, how, 10 o'clock tonight?
Correct.
New York time.
Yes.
So it's happening quickly here.
Yes.
And we'll have to see it. That will be very
important. About 2 hours later, jets out from South Korea back to the White House.
So I didn't know that.
Yeah,
So right back.
Yeah, we just saw the president's schedule.
Tyler Kendall, Josh Woodrow with us with Bloomberg with that reporting. And this came up at dinner last night, and it was incredible dinner.
Yeah.
You go to McDonald's on Thursday.
Sure, I am.
It's fine cuisine.
No.
Marta Norton joins us now, Chief Investment Strategist at Empower. Marta, what percentage of 401k people, individuals, are taking advantage of this magnificent Mag 7 AI boom? Is it like 8% of people are involved? Is it like 80%? I don't have a handle on that.
You know what's interesting about the 401k space is, yes, I would say the majority are taking advantage of the AI boom, but there's a lot of allocation within the 401 space to products like target date or managed accounts. And so what's interesting about this space is there's a lot of discipline around how they invest because those, weightings within their portfolios are pretty diversified and there's a rebalancing effect. So you don't see the same kind of chasing in the 401k space that you might see elsewhere.
So Marta, just in the market here today, we have the Fed today, certainly a big issue for the market, but we've also got right smack in the middle of earnings. We got a lot of big tech companies here for the close today, after the close tomorrow. Talk to us about earnings and how important they are for this market, because a lot of folks are really concerned about valuation in this market.
Yeah, well, add my name to the list of folks who are concerned about valuation, but it's a longer term concern. I mean, what we're seeing really over the course of 2025 is a market that was kind of saved by earnings. We had a lot of concerns around fiscal policy, particularly as it pertains to tariffs, but it's really been earnings that have swooped in and really earnings that are leveraged to that AI trade. And folks have called this a super cycle for AI. And I can't help but kind of begin to echo that commentary, because when we look at the capacity build, the demand, it's a tremendous shift for the economy.
It's off your remit, but you're so good at this, from Morningstar over to the juggernaut of Power. I should mention, folks, in Power, the people that manage my 201k, triple leveraged all cash. It's really helped out. I'd like to thank you, Power, for that. Marta called me up 3 years ago and said, Tom, never buy Apple. Thank you, Marta, for that. Marta, are people actually retiring early? Like, are you seeing people go, OMG, it's never going to get this good? See ya.
I don't think that's the trend that we're seeing today. I think we are seeing, certainly in the pandemic era, I guess we did see people pull back and maybe say, now is the time to hang it up. But I think there's still a pretty strong push for people to stay in the market. I was listening to your prior guest who was talking about the labor market, the AI impact on older employees, on younger employees.
Yes.
I do all the time.
Thomas Simmons of Jefferies, he was brilliant. Continue, Ms.
That's great. Yeah, well, I think it's a pretty fascinating question. Where is the AI effect going to be felt most severely in the labor market? And I guess as we're taking a look forward, at least to 2026, our estimation is it's still a payroll effect. It's still kind of a stagnant job addition effect. But longer term, where are those layoffs going to hit? And you can start to see some of these areas that maybe are some of the more established white collar employees beginning to take a hit. So that's something we would want to watch as we look at those retirement trends.
Marta.
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. Thank you for joining. We are live streaming on YouTube and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com today. Today is October 29th. I will also release this on my multiple channel setup. So you can subscribe to YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Please subscribe. Also, you can follow me on X and GETTR. You can follow me on Substack and Patreon and TikTok. So please add that to your list if you want updates and to follow me. If you like the content that I create and you want to help support, you can support by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, making sure you subscribe to all the different channels that I have, and get the great products that I offer on my store. I have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology that you can take a look at. You can also donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee, or be a paid member to my Patreon or my Substack. All these videos I do are for free. I have thousands of videos for free. So please help support the work that I do. I greatly appreciate it. All right, the market is about to open. All right, it just opened. It just opened. We're at 6,908. I still have a target for year end at 6,850 to about 7,000 for year end. So just pay attention. There may be a little bit, I'm concerned about volatility in December based on tariff news coming out of Trump. The Trump news can move markets, so you have to be careful on this. But we're probably going to see an all-time high for the S&P 500 by year end. But my range is around 6,850 to 7,000 now. So pay attention. We're at 6,907. And then a lot of news is coming about NVIDIA becomes first stock in the world to top $5 trillion. I'm a little concerned about the valuation of some of the Mag 7s. But like I said, by these investment houses and wealth managers and investment funds, they want to close the books out in a positive note because they need that as sales material, marketing material for next year. So the chances of it being like a major sell-off between now and the end of the year is low probability. Now anything can happen, but it's low probability. This thing's going to have some legs and continue to go up. The question is what that price structure is at year end and how it coincides with the periodicity, the heteroscedasticness of the VIX index. We're going to take a look at that in detail at year end and determine what should happen in terms of probabilities in Q1, Q2, and Q3 of 2026. But we have to wait until we see that price structure. I am a little concerned. I feel that the market is a little overbought, but it's going to carry into the first quarter of next year. Now, the question is, what will happen after that? Who knows? And it's a midterm election year for the United States, so that also adds to the complexity of it. So just pay attention to that. We're going to go over some news about not just the markets, but Mamdani. Israel had a strike on Hamas last night. We're going to go over that. I want to play a video by Sky News. They interviewed Douglas Murray, and he was talking about Mamdani. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and be prepared for the fall and winter season. It's really important, all right? You've been paying attention to the news, you know what I'm talking about. So get the elderberry zinc lozenges made from structural nanosilver. Moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away to mitigate the problem. I also have them in drop form. You can get in blueberry, cherry flavor, and also in honey and lemon. Get a few bags for your household. Have some at work, have some at home. The moment you have that throat irritation, take them right away. Mitigate the problem. Be prepared for the fall and the winter season. Super important. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Another great supplement that I have to help you through the fall and the winter season is Cleanse, which is 30 parts per million, and Max 35, which is 35 parts per million. You can take this every day. I've been using this protocol for over 5 years. Take a teaspoon of this or the Cleanse every day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20-30 seconds, and then swallow it. You're going to improve your oral cavity, your oral pharynx, help with your mucosal barrier, and you will be improving the health of your epithelial lining, especially in your oropharynx. This is super important. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day and do the same thing. Once you start feeling better, or the people around you are feeling better, then go back to your maintenance dose. But be prepared for the fall and winter. In addition, you can take this daily to boost up the immune system. So please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, you get $5 off any order. I want you to be prepared for the fall and winter, and I want you to slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system. If you pay attention to what I have to say, and you follow the protocol that I'm doing, you are actually going to slow down the aging process. It's that simple. All right. Let's take a look at what Murray had to say.
I think if you're not using Endowment to do business travel, then you're missing out. My name's Clay, and I'm chief of staff for the go-to-market on this.
The New York residents, they're going to the polls next week, and they're probably going to have a new mayor. Zoran Mamdani is expected to prevail. Yeah, let's hear from him.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her job.
Well, it wasn't so much his aunt as his dad's cousin, but, semantics. Douglas, is he ready to lead?
No, in absolutely no way is he ready to lead, and that was just another reminder of it. This is such a self-involved little narcissist with so little going for him that he even decides to turn the memory of 9/11 and the 3,000 Americans murdered that day into a story about his aunt and the subway. It's interesting, like so many things that this smarmy candidate does, he makes it about himself and it all turns out to be untrue anyway. It seems to the extent that he had any such aunt in question, she wasn't in New York at the time, and in any case, didn't wear the headscarf. So it's an interesting one, New Yorkers. Within less than a quarter of a century of 9/11, do we allow things like the slaughter of 3,000 Americans by Islamic fundamentalists to be turned instead into a story of how this apparently fit?
I agree with Murray that Mamdani is not fit for the mayoral position. Totally agree with that. I don't like socialists. I don't like communists. I like capitalists. I like people about God, country, and family. All right? Mamdani doesn't represent that. Murray, though, all right, is right to state, well, after a quarter of a basically a quarter of a century, 25 years, people have forgot about 9/11 in New York and think that it's okay. It's all hunky-dory. But the thing is he doesn't mention that people in New York started to protest against the war in the Middle East, saying "not in my name." You remember that?
Numerous U.S. military veterans have handed back their service medals, including the Global War
Sorry,
on Terrorism.
stop. All right. So the point I'm making is that in New York, shortly after 9/11, you had liberals out there basically saying, "Not in my name, not in my name." They didn't want a war, not in my name. Now, I think there was an inside job. I think that the Islamic terrorists did the event in 9/11, but the thing is that there was an inside job and there was a stand down that took place. But Al-Qaeda was a part of it. Unfortunately, we had people inside our government that was probably a part of it too. All right, with that said, the point here is there were people in New York that wanted to sweep 9/11 underneath the rug within months, within the first year, and protest "not in my name" for the war in the Middle East. Now, you can disagree with the war in the Middle East, how it was conducted. I'm just stating facts. All right? I really don't care what your opinion is. It's just fact. The fact is that there were people that were protesting shortly after 9/11, and it was this whole "not in my name" banner that they were going up and down the streets on.
Fictitious, or at least partly fictitious, figure of his aunt might have once felt possibly as if someone could look at her badly, nastily in the subway in the years after. This is just outrageous, and I'm afraid everyone in Europe who has seen candidates like Mamdani before knows exactly what's going on. He's trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. He's trying to smarm and smile his way into office. But this statement alone, if we didn't have any other evidence of his extremist views, would demonstrate the extremism of his views, because he's not able to focus on the things that actually have affected Americans, and instead wants to keep on creating, as so many radicals like him do, wants to create fictitious narratives about America and Americans being bigoted. And, Americans can't even be murdered by jihadists without people like Mamdani turning it into a fear of a pseudo-fictitious.
And this is the beginnings of how they get in. This is the beginnings of the Marxism. This is the beginnings of a cultural revolution, just like Mao, where they're just kind of changing history, changing the mentalities, changing the emotions or the pathos of the society. Mamdani is part of a caliphate. It's not just him running the mayoral race, and most likely will win. It's not even just destroying capitalism, which he's trying to do. It's actually perpetuating a caliphate. And this idea of demonizing other religions, losing affinity to country, and the ultra-lib is against the family unit, the traditional family unit. They're against it. So the society is going to crash. But that's what Mamdani wants. Because if you come in and you crash the society, it's easier for a caliphate to come and sprout. Look at what happened in Hamtramck, Michigan. Look at what happened in Dearborn, Michigan. Look at what happened with London. This is the plan. Everyone's thinking about, well, there's a comet that might be alien by, I don't know, 3I Atlas or whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? That's all bullshit. But everyone's worried about 3I Atlas. Or everyone's worried about, who shot Charlie Kirk. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is what's going on with our politic. What matters is what's going on with individuals like Mamdani trying to deep six capitalism. What matters is a caliphate that is happening. What matters is that the Christians during the Crusades at the end didn't win. They lost. And they've been losing ever since. And it's taking, and the Muslim invasion is taking over Europe. Don't believe me? Just look at the news. Do some reading. That's what's more important. Is understanding the larger arc of what's happening here. Not some comet that looks like a spaceship. Finding out who killed Charlie Kirk doesn't change the price of tea in China. Doesn't matter. There are bigger fish to fry.
There's once feeling sad about possibly being looked at meanly. I mean, this is just outrageous, and the umpteenth example and demonstration of why Mamdani should be nowhere near the mayoral office in New York.
Well, we had the mayoral debate finally. What did we learn there?
Now,
Mamdani
you know, I don't know, Doug, Douglas is, educated Brit. I'm not sure if he went to Cambridge or Oxford. I don't look at it. Thing is he didn't bring up what I've been saying for the last 2 videos. What about the Enlightenment? What about this concept of life, liberty, and property? What about what our founding fathers enshrined in the Constitution about our civil liberties and the protection of property? Knowing what Plato warned in the Republic about mob rule, warning us about the failures of democracy. And that's why we have a constitutional republic, not a democracy. But yet, Mamdani still thinks that we have a democracy, the will of the people. We're going to rise up and take people's property. But that was against, that his policy is against what our founding fathers enshrined in the Constitution about property rights, which is based on the foundation of John Locke and the philosophy of the Enlightenment. I have not seen anybody talk about this, but people will talk about spaceships behind comets, different trajectories that are hitting, possibly hitting Charlie Kirk. Do you think that matters? Does that matter? No. What matters is your property rights. What matters is that there's actually a new movement in the United States where they're trying to erode our civil liberties. That's more important. And standing up and saying no. That's more important. But there's lots of people out there just trying to, milk the cow, saying that there's spaceships behind a comet, or a comet is a spaceship, or we're going to be invaded by aliens. Maybe being invaded by aliens would stop the fucking Marxist takeover. The point I'm making is that there is a much bigger problem that is arising. And that is the same problems that we had in the 1700s. And that is making sure that we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And anyone else that doesn't talk about this very subject and is focused on this is not on the battlefield, is not in the arena, is not focused on the most important thing right now. Property rights.
As this progressive champion of the poor, is he at least that? Can the poor expect to get more affordable housing in New York City, for example?
No, I mean, he has no real plan for any of that. One of his few flagship policies is that he says that if he becomes mayor, he wants to make riding the bus in New York free. He was asked in this debate by the moderator. Finally, he got some sort of tricky questions. People actually drilled down behind the smile. And they said, this $700 million, I think, is expected to cost this free bus ride thing. How are you going to pay for it, he was asked. And he replied by saying that if bus riding is made free, it will lower violence against bus drivers. It's not clear why that is. I mean, among other things, if anyone can just jump on a bus in New York, including all the homeless and the drug addicts and everything else without paying, I don't know why that makes life safer for anyone. But he also said that it meant that more people would ride the bus and therefore fewer people would get in their cars. I'm afraid that policy, or these versions of that, have been tried elsewhere. What will happen is the buses will become more dangerous than they are, and as a result, many more people will use their cars than would have done. But he was then pushed again, yes, but irrespective of potential violence against bus drivers in New York, how are you going to pay for it? And eventually, he said, through higher taxes. So great. He's such an economic whiz kid, this guy. He says he's going to give New Yorkers free bus rides, but they're going to have.
Mamdani's policy of making everything free is going to make the society worse off. we've already done this grand experiment right after World War II. It was called the Cold War. Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And Eastern Europe was decimated by communism. Western Europe grew out of the Marshall Plan, capitalism. Now, why would we want to try the experiment again? Oh, I know. Mamdani didn't learn his history lessons. And by the way, Douglas Murray did go to Oxford, but with such a high education from the Brits, why didn't he bring up John Locke? I don't know.
For it in higher taxes. That's the kind of thing that socialists like him always argue for. They take more and more money away from the public. They make the public poorer and poorer, but they dangle little baubles. Like every now and then you can get a free bus ride on a more dangerous bus. It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes, it's going to be scary to think what New York's going to look like in 2 or 3 years' time under a...
Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Bunch of overeducated dipshits coming to New York thinking it is their right to live here, and they're going to destroy it. They're going to destroy it. Just like how individuals went to prestigious universities, didn't have the chops, they got these humanity degrees or gender degrees and all this stuff. And then they basically eroded the education, the value of the education. And it's getting to the point where it's not just the prestigious universities, it's all universities. The question is are universities relevant anymore? That's a serious issue. And with the advent of AI, and knowing how to think, assuming you are a person that knows how to think, you probably don't need you don't need a formal education anymore. Now, that wasn't necessarily the case 20 years ago. But in today's world, you can basically learn anything. You can learn nuclear physics. You can learn advanced chemistry. You can learn medicine. You can learn how to paint. You can learn history. You can learn government. Everything is out there now. It's all open sourced. As long as you know how to use first principles. What do I know, and how do I get farther down the road with knowledge? And you dive in. You can use AI to create different paths for learning a certain subject. Who are the most important writers of that era or of that topic? And getting books and reading them. Listening to lectures that have been published. We are living in a society where we're bathed in knowledge. But there's so many people that'll take their phone and scroll on TikTok or scroll on X and go, wow, 3i Atlas might be a spaceship. This is the reason why we're being taken advantage of. Because we have a population that has been dumbed down. And it's time to wake up, or it'll be too late.
Socialist Mamdani administration. Let's go to the UK now. And we've spoken about the flag protest there. Operation Raise the Colours, supposed to represent patriotism and pride in Britain. But not everybody is on board. Let's hear from Labor MP Jivan Santer, who is calling on Brits to take down their flags because it's making some people feel uncomfortable.
And then I see flags painted on roundabouts, and that is just a bit weird. And you know, because you've seen it online and I see it in my inbox, that this does make people feel uneasy. And they are
So this is the point I'm making with the ultra liberal and the caliphate takeover. They're part of the same coin. All right. You have ultra libs that are pushing an agenda that destroys the pillars of society, God, country, and family. But you also have Muslims coming into your country and feeding on that, trying to take down the flags. Now, they're talking about the British flag here, but you're seeing the same thing happen in the United States. Same thing. Look at, remember what happened in the encampment at Harvard? An American flag is lifted over John Harvard. But during that encampment, they lifted up a Palestinian flag over John Harvard. Now think about that. You have a bunch of snot-nosed brats in 2023. In 2024, I think the encampment was actually in 2024. But you had these snot-nosed kids putting a Palestinian flag up where the American flag usually flies. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for anyone that's a patriot to this country, to the United States. And it's unacceptable for all of the service members throughout all the wars that the United States have fought. It's being disrespectful to those soldiers, the ones that are dead and the ones that are living. It's unacceptable. So it's unacceptable to have a Muslim saying, well, it feels a little bit weird flying your country's flag. In this case, it's the British flag. Wake up, Britain. There's a takeover taking place in your country, and it's called a caliphate.
These flags supposed to be sending.
Douglas, what does it say about a nation if the national flag fills people with angst and makes them feel uneasy, or you've got an MP there saying it's a bit weird?
Yeah, there's nothing weird about it at all. If he travelled to any other nation or country, probably fine that the flag of that nation was flying in that country. It's just a reminder of what a pushover people think that Britain is these days. I mean, try it with any other country, Rita, and maybe this guy can. Maybe you can go to any other country and say, you know what, you flying your national flag makes me feel uncomfortable. And just see how much care anyone gives to such a statement. The fact is that somebody like him can even say this is a reminder of the tolerance and decency of the British people. Some people might say the over-tolerance and the over-decency of the British people. Because if the British people weren't tolerant and decent, then people like this gentleman wouldn't be having the lives and careers that they are having, and they wouldn't have the ability to complain that the country they're in, when the flag is flown, makes them feel uneasy. It's just, again, this just unbelievable bigotry against the most tolerant nation in the world, be it Australia, be it Britain. It's always the same pattern. It's the countries that are the most tolerant, the most respecting of difference, and much more that end up being taken advantage of by buffoons like this.
I mean, can you just imagine going to a country in the Middle East and wanting to reside there and telling them to take down their flags? It's making you feel a little bit uncomfortable. I mean, it is just, like you said, astonishing behaviour. Now to an incredible story from the Telegraph, today's Telegraph, revealing that an activist accused of targeting an RAF base with Palestine Action has been leading anti-Israel protests from behind bars. Mohammed Umar Khalid had been using a prison phone to lead the protests in what has been described as yet another security farce. Douglas, that just seems astonishing.
It was astonishing in modern.
There is this, I'm telling you, there is this overlaying of Marxism, this ultra liberal, this caliphate. It's all kind of, and this, this pro-Palestinian collage. It's all like overlaid. It's not one thing that's happening. But this picture here represents exactly what I'm talking about. Think about this. Right now, I have good pattern recognition about things. All right, so you got to pay attention. Right? You have the beard. You have this kind of like this worker hat. It's playing to this whole communism. Right? Sometimes you see these types of hats back in the 1920s, but definitely during Mao's era. And you have this beard. So you have this kind of like communism, Marxism kind of hat. And you have this the youth. All right, so this is a liberal, because usually people that are younger are not conservative. You have this beard that is playing homage to this kind of like, there's an Islamic feel to it. You might not be able to see this picture because of the way the camera is. See, it's almost like a Bin Laden. It has a Bin Laden kind of feel to his beard, right? So there was this overlay between this communism, pro-Palestinian. Remember, this is about leading protests that are pro-Palestinian, right? So this pro-Palestinian in the United States is also layered with the BLM movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. There's an element of an Occupy movement internally in this. That's what we were seeing with the encampments in 2023 and 2024. And there was this a caliphate kind of aura about it. I'm telling you, you can almost predict what is going to happen during the midterm election in the United States. Not in terms of results, because no one knows what the results are, but I have a feeling that there's going to be social unrest. And they are starting to sow the seeds with the No Kings March. Now that was a flop. But I have a feeling that as the summer approaches for next year, and we get into the midterm, into the last leg of the midterm election, which will be November of 2026, you're going to see more momentum of an uprising. And it's this guy is like merging something from 1920s or the 1950s during Mao's time period and overlaying it with Bin Laden. This whole Islamic terrorism. That's what that looks like. If you took those two concepts and overlaid them together, you get that.
We've just had the case this week of a man who came to the UK illegally, immediately started molesting schoolgirls, was detained and then accidentally released. And he actually returned to the place he'd been released from, asking to be let back into the prison and to be deported. And he kept being sent back by the authorities. He said, no, chum, on your way, go back out, have at it. And that's just, the last 24 hours. So every day in this calamitously badly run modern Britain, we have cases like this. Yes, every now and then they will catch somebody who's an illegal migrant, and they'll let them back out, or they'll let them back out, swap them with somebody in France, and they then come back in again. Or in this case, you finally actually do detain somebody who's involved in terrorist violence against an RAF base. But it turns out that he can conceal a phone in prison or whatever and guide the operations from outside. It's just another reminder that under the Labour Party in Britain, it's just a fundamentally unserious system, a totally broken system. And just everybody in Britain has to hope that at some point quite soon, this is turned around. But I mean, you read stories like this, Rita, just every day in the British press. And, you know, who's in charge of this stuff? Geniuses like David Lammy.
Douglas, before you go, the world celebrated the Gaza peace deal not too long ago. We noted many of those free Palestinian types didn't seem to be celebrating. Let's hear from one of them, Irish actress and pro-Palestinian activist Denise Goff.
Yeah.
Well, ceasefire isn't liberation.
Yeah, see, they don't want peace. They don't want peace. They want to take over the land. All right? So, again, it goes back to the idea. You have individuals that, on both sides, the only way this is going to bring peace to the world is as one side absolutely obliterates the other. Either the Palestinians kicks out the Jews, or the Jews kick out the Palestinians. And that's not just Gaza. That's the West Bank. That's both. That's East Jerusalem. Because it's all about the ownership of the Temple Mount. And people would say, well, just take over the Temple Mount and the Palestinians can have the West Bank and Gaza. It won't work like that because it'll be continually terrorism. It'll never end. Wars only win and only come to a conclusion. You only win a war, and a war comes to conclusion when it's total victory. Total victory. False peaces, ceasefires, amnesties, or not amnesties, armistice, you know, half peace only kicks the can down the road and it flares up again. Remember World War I? That was an armistice. And it ended up being World War II. False peace never works. And you may have to wait 20 years, may have to wait 30 years. But guess what? It flares up again. But when you absolutely, completely destroy your enemy, and they can never rise up and have armed conflict with you, if you don't secure that, you're going to have more war. You're going to have more war. You have to completely obliterate your enemy. So if the Palestinians are going to win, they have to win on the battlefield and kick out all of the inhabitants of Israel. And Israel, for it to win, has to kick out all the inhabitants of the ones in the West Bank and in Gaza and in East Jerusalem. That's the only way this is going to work. There is no two-state solution, three-state solution. It's only win. That's the only solution. It's a false peace. It's a false peace. But the point here is that the liberals, they didn't want to bring back the hostages. They didn't want to have really a ceasefire. What they want is to kick out the Jews and have the Palestinians run the show. And the Jews want it the opposite. The Jews want to kick out the Palestinians. So how do you think this is really going to reach homeostasis? How do you think that this is going to reach some sort of equilibrium? You got to look at every single war ever that has happened during mankind's history. And that is, your enemy is completely destroyed. That's the only way this is going to end. And they capitulate. So if Israel's going to win, they have to completely destroy and completely make the Palestinians capitulate. And they'll never, ever, ever think about doing an uprising ever again. Half-hearted measures only will kick the can down the road.
Free Palestine. And also it feels that it was made without any Palestinian voices, but also that it meets the terms of a true free Palestine and an end to the occupation.
There you go, Douglas. So we've been told the actress also accused Israel of gaslighting the world about what's happening in Gaza.
Yes, she strikes me, Rita, as not being the brain of Britain or indeed of Ireland. I don't know if you get that sense as well. You can see her sort of struggling for the next thought. It almost is written across her forehead as she does that. She says that there don't seem to be any Palestinian voices in the discussion. That's very strange, isn't it? Because, of course, among other things, a rather strong Palestinian voice, the remaining leadership of Hamas, were absolutely central to the negotiations. Palestinian voices is presumably something she's just sort of heard talked about at some poetry jam in a theatre somewhere in London, where she's attended a solidarity evening at some point. And she probably can't point to any of the places in question on a map, but she's heard things like, we must prioritize Palestinian voices. And actually, when Palestinian voices make themselves very loudly heard, whether on October the 7th with their rape-a-thon and murder-a-thon, or indeed in the recent negotiations, it seems that this dimwit just doesn't hear them. So perhaps it's not a lack of Palestinian voices, it's a lack of her being able to hear anything she doesn't want to hear. But as I say, I think it's very unlikely that this actress actually is over the complete issues of phases 1, 2, and 3 of the ceasefire negotiation. I don't know, Rita. I'd love you to ask her on and grill her on the real fine points of this plan. I'd pay good money to watch that.
You know what? We will reach out to her people and extend the invitation. She has been to Gaza.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a supplement that you take every day. It's a very potent antioxidant. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach, and what this will do is soak up free radicals. Now you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and MCT coconut oil. Take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. And what this will do is soak up free radicals within your cells and around your cells in the extracellular matrix, and less stress will be on those cells. The cells will perform better. Your mitochondria will be healthier, so you have more energy. So by soaking up free radicals, you're reducing stress in the cell, and you're reducing the free radical damage and boosting up the health of the mitochondria. Your cells are going to perform better, and therefore your tissues and your organ systems will perform better. That means that your immune system will be boosted up, you'll have a better endocrine system, and your brain function will improve too. Why? Because by soaking up free radicals at the cerebral level, what will happen is that you're going to be reducing stress on the neuron, which will help to maintain the myelin sheath. You're going to improve the health of the mitochondria within the neuron. You're going to have more ATP to create neurotransmitters. And over time, you're going to have better dendritic connections to allow for conductivity. That means that basically you're going to be thinking faster and you're going to have better memory. C60 will also help your vascular level. By soaking up free radicals in your bloodstream, what will happen is you're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL. Oxidized LDL is a major component for plaque formation. Now, taking C60 on a regular basis will also help with the basal layer of your skin and improve your adult stem cells at the basal layer of your skin, where that's the production of new skin cells, because you shed skin cells. So you have a layer that's producing new skin cells. That's called the basal layer. Basal layer's health, the health of the basal layer, can be improved by taking C60 and resveratrol. The C60 is going to soak up those free radicals and help those cells be healthier. So that means that over time, you're actually going to look younger. So C60, very potent. I've been taking this since 2016 every day. 2016, every day, teaspoon a day. Also, take it during the fall and the winter to help to boost up that immune system. And when you do contract something, you produce more free radicals, so you want to soak those up. If you work out, take it before your workout, and you're going to be soaking up the free radicals that you generate during your workout, and you will recover quicker. So please go to my store. This is very powerful stuff. Take a teaspoon a day every day, and within 1 year, you're going to notice that you look younger. Within 2 months, your body is going to have more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. It's very potent stuff. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C, and it's going to slow down the aging process. All right, let's listen to Alan Garber. I'm going to see Alan Garber actually in the near the end of the year. It's at the end of the year, near the end of January, I think it is. And Alan Garber is the president of Harvard. All right, he's going to be talking to David Rubenstein about the endowment issue at Harvard with the taxation.
Tax that was put in under the first Trump administration, and it was increased in this current administration. And the endowment tax is a tax on earnings by major universities, in effect. And do you see any real justification for that tax? And is it impacting Harvard adversely or other schools like Harvard?
The endowment tax, clearly, it's a substantial tax, particularly for universities like Harvard that are expected to be in the top tier. And of course, it's damaging because, for example, so much of our financial aid, the scholarships that we give our students, are funded through the endowment. And it funds the research, it funds all kinds of activities in the university. So yes, it's quite damaging. In terms of addressing the problems that we are accused of, and that I believe was part of the rationale for implementing or for passing the endowment tax, the tax is only going to make it harder to address these issues, not easier.
I started All Nation Restoration to help people. Chase for Business is literally what it says in the name. It is Chase for Business, where I can find everything I need in one place. So we can help people get back to life.
All right, that was pretty short. I was hoping that would be a little bit longer. He did speak for 24 minutes on another lecture, but I'm not going to play that. All right, let's listen to Cuomo complaining about Mamdani.
So Election Day in New York City now just under a week away. The race for the next mayor is getting tighter. Former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, has narrowed the gap between himself and frontrunner, the Democrat socialist Zoran Mamdani. Take a look at these new numbers. A new Suffolk University poll shows Mamdani is leading with 43%, and Andrew Cuomo is at 33.6%. Curtis Sliwa remains at 10.6%. Cuomo has narrowed that 10 points. It was 20 points away in the last Suffolk poll. Sliwa remains defiant on remaining in this race until next Tuesday, despite growing pressure to drop out so that Cuomo and Sliwa do not split the votes. Joining me now is the man himself, New York City now independent mayoral candidate, Andrew Cuomo, former governor of New York. Great to see you, Governor.
Good to be with you, Maria.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to you on narrowing this race. How are you going to close this gap?
Well, we have about another week left. The gap is closing on its own. What's happening, Maria, is the more they learn about Mamdani, the less support he has. What happened early on is, he was very good on social media and everything sounded fine. But now that when you actually look at what he was talking about, there's no there there. Also, the Republican vote for Curtis Sliwa is dropping because people get that Sliwa is not a viable candidate. And really, if you vote for Curtis Sliwa, you're voting for Mamdani. And my agenda is much more attractive to the Republicans.
Well, you were feisty in that debate. Everybody said you won that last debate. How can you continue to point out some of these issues that you're talking about when referring to Mamdani and what he will do to New York?
Yeah, well, people get it. They now get the difference that I am the Democrat. He is a socialist. New York cannot survive as a socialist economy, right? He would chase corporations out of this city, out of this state. He would chase wealth out of this city and state. And that just doesn't work for anyone if you have declining revenue. He is against the NYPD. He's against public safety. And one of the key issues in this city is public safety. I want to add 5,000 police officers. He has phony solutions on how to make housing affordable. The only way to make housing affordable is build more housing. I was a former HUD secretary, as you know, and I have a whole plan to do that. So they understand that Mamdani doesn't have a plan, doesn't have any qualifications whatsoever for the job. It's really getting Republicans to understand what President Trump said, that Sliwa is not ready for prime time. He is not viable. Don't throw your vote away. It's between me and Mamdani.
And of course, we saw that from Eric Adams. I saw you at the Knick game the other night with Eric Adams. He recently endorsed you. You picked up another major endorsement just yesterday from former New York Governor David Paterson. Here's what he said at your campaign event when you were in the Bronx.
Building more affordable housing is critical for our city. This November, New Yorkers can vote on an affordable housing fast track and other city charter reforms. So flip your ballot over and vote on questions 2 through 3.
GETTR wants to offer GX, and you're holding it back. Download Opera GX.
Your campaign event when you were in the Bronx. Watch this.
When we have so many issues before us, poor housing, crime, unemployment and underemployment, poor and inadequate healthcare facilities, and often a failed educational system, we need somebody who can come in and reorganize and give our children the education they deserve and put people in this city who can't afford it into decent and affordable housing. No one's going to get a free ride, no matter what some people are promising. But there is a great opportunity for this city if we elect this gentleman right now next Tuesday.
And your platform from day one has been ready on day one.
Ready on day one.
Yeah.
Qualifications matter, Normally you go to hire someone, what's the first question you ask? What are your qualifications? What's your experience? Zoran has never had a real job. Let me just say that.
Yeah, you said that in the debate, yeah.
And mayor of the city of New York is important. This is the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy. We're watching hurricane season, Hurricane Melissa. This was the anniversary of Hurricane Sandy in New York. Remember how devastating it was? 50 people lost their lives. You're mayor. You need to know how to deal with that. There is no on-the-job training. But again, Maria, it's going to come back to the Republicans. They're going to make the decision. And they have to understand that if you vote for Sliwa, you're voting for Mamdani.
Yep.
And New York cannot become a socialist city.
Some people make the point, well, how important really is the mayor when you consider what's going on in the governor's office? Look, you're going to have to work with Kathy Hochul. As mayor, will you be able to cut taxes? Will you be able to make the kind of change that, for example, Curtis Sliwa has been promising?
Well, Curtis Sliwa can't make any change, right? That we know. So the rhetoric is nice, but there's no reality. The mayor of New York is a very powerful position. Yes, you need the governor. I know where you need the governor, and I know when you need the governor.
Right.
I was governor for 11 years. But the mayor in this situation, it's all about New York City. New York City is the engine for the state. The state doesn't work without New York City.
Yep.
And we have work to do in the city. We need 5,000 more police. We have to get taxes down, Maria, because people are leaving. We have to say to the business community, you're our friend, not our enemy. We want to work with you. How do we grow? And we have to have a competent government that builds housing quickly so the rents come down. Those things have to happen.
How are you going to get business people back to New York and, you know, residents who said, I'm done with this city because of crime, because of costs and the rest? Are there incentive plans that you're working on to get those people to come back to New York?
Exactly. 2 points. First, we are working on incentive plans and tax incentive plans to get people to come back to New York. And here's my New York arrogance. They want to come back to New York. New York is a special place. Yes, people left during COVID, in the aftermath of COVID. Yes, quality of life dipped and people moved to other cities, other states. I believe they want to come home. This is their home. They want to be here. We just have to make it possible for them to come home by cleaning up the place, tax incentives. They'll come back.
You said the last time we talked with you, when you came on my show a couple of weeks ago, you said, look, Maria, since the cashless bail situation, they changed it 4 times. And so it was a really important point, I think, that you made to speak to the viewers who are still on the fence. What do you want to say about that? In terms of cashless bail that you may have directed initially, you said they changed it after you stepped down.
Yes, I passed the law 6 years ago. It has then been changed 4 times about since then. So that law is gone, right? You change a law, you have a new law. The question is, the issue is not now the bail laws in New York. It is judges and prosecutors enforcing the law. Because what we also had at the same time was this mentality in New York City among the political elite, defund the police, decriminalize everything. Nobody should go to jail for anything. That political movement did a lot of damage to New York, and that's the judges and the prosecutors. The law is the law. Enforce the law.
Andrew, how do we get here? Because I feel like that issue in and of itself has been a huge divider for Democrats. And so right now you've got moderate Democrats like yourself, and you've got these other extremists who are trying to push Mamdani forward. He held a rally over the weekend at Forest Hill Stadium in Queens alongside Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So what do you want to say about the division within the Democrat Party right now? And many of our audience, I think, agrees with that. And they're moderate. You might lean to the right on some things, lean to the left on other things.
Yeah, Maria, look, the truth is there's a quiet civil war going on in the Democratic Party right now. You have an extreme left, radical left. Bernie Sanders, AOC, Mamdani is just the banner carrier for that movement versus the mainstream moderate Democrats. They now call me moderate. They used to call me liberal. Now I'm a moderate because the whole party shifted. And that's what this election is about. It is that civil war. I believe that far left will destroy the Democratic Party. I believe it will destroy the Democratic Party nationwide if that far left becomes dominant. This is not a socialist country. They're not going to accept socialist policy. They're not anti-law and order. They're not anti-business, right? So that's why I think this election is so important. It's garnered so much attention. It's not just about mayor of New York. It's about the future of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's a good point. Now, at that rally the other day, Mamdani knows you're coming for him. He had a lot to say about you. Watch this.
I stand before you tonight as the nominee of a Democratic Party reinvigorated in its pursuit of making government.
Doesn't he sound like Barack Obama?
For everyone, not just the wealthy and the well-connected. Andrew Cuomo and his corporate cronies did everything they could to make this campaign one of fear and one of smallness. Andrew Cuomo, Eric Adams, and Curtis Sliwa do not have an agenda for the future. We are going to freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants and use every resource at our disposal to build housing for everyone who needs it. We are going to eliminate the fare on every single bus line, and we are going to create universal childcare at no cost to parents.
He's gonna freeze the rent, he's gonna have free buses, free grocery stores. Who's paying for all of that?
Yeah, well, this is why.
We are.
This is why his candidacy is collapsing. First of all, he can't do any of those things. He cannot freeze the rent. The mayor doesn't even control that. There's an independent board.
Good point.
It would be illegal for him to interfere with the independent board. Free buses. He doesn't control the buses. The state controls the buses. It is all made up. It's all made up. And he's an actor, he's a performer, he does it well, but it's all made up. And he goes back to, we would give this city over to the corporate elite, right? He's a socialist.
Yeah.
Against corporations, against job production. When we brought Amazon to New York, it was the socialists that killed the Amazon project. They are just anti-business, anti-growth, and the city doesn't live if it doesn't grow.
Yeah, it's a good point that you make. There's also some questions about how he's getting this support and who's paying for the support. The New York Post today writes this: Zoran Mamdani faces criminal referrals from the DOJ over alleged illegal campaign donations from foreigners. So how did he become so popular in New York? When you were the governor there, obviously you know all of this, what the governor is in charge of versus what the mayor is in charge of. But he was hit with 2 criminal referrals this week, filled by a campaign finance watchdog accusing him of accepting illegal contributions from foreign donors. Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I don't know anything beyond what I read, but it is clear he came out of the pro-Gaza movement, right? The college protest movement. That's really who he is. He came out of the anti-Israel movement. At that rally you saw, he was with a fellow named Hassan Piker, who was the person who said America deserved 9/11. America deserved 9/11.
Unbelievable.
And he campaigns with him. I mean, he is, I think he's not only anti-New York, he's anti-American. How do you justify standing with a person who says we deserve 9/11? 3,000 people died, 150,000 suffering with 9/11 related illness. So he is totally out of sync with New Yorkers, and more New Yorkers are realizing that.
Well, this is very important because next year will be 25 years since 9/11, I believe. And if he's the mayor, how is he going to treat all of those people who are still in mourning from losing their lives? 3,000 people. I mean, all of the first responders that we lost on 9/11. I was there at the New York Stock Exchange. I guess I'm wondering if you're expecting New York to look more like London. You go to London right now, and it is largely.
Hey everyone, in this guide we're introducing our new AI indicator, which we've developed in partnership with OpenAI. Now this is the first trading indicator of its kind.
I'm in London right now, and it is largely Muslim. Women are completely covered up. I don't know if you expect, if Mamdani were to be in charge, him to change the look of New York as well.
Look, he is out of sync with how New Yorkers feel. You would never, you'd have to disassociate yourself immediately with anyone who said America deserved 9/11, right? It is so repulsive, right, to all New Yorkers. I just think he doesn't get it, you know. He's dual citizenship. He was a citizen of Uganda. His parents own a mansion in Uganda. He spent a lot of time there. He just doesn't understand the New York culture, the New York values, what 9/11 meant, what entrepreneurial growth means, opportunity means, why people came here.
Yeah. And you said that the Democrat Party is going through this civil war right now. It's interesting to see the support that he has gotten from people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But let's put the socialism issue aside. I want to hear about your vision for New York. You were governor for 11 years. You know what is needed for the state or for the city. What is your vision? What is your platform? You said you're going to hire 5,000 new cops. What else?
Yeah. right out of the box, 5,000 cops, 1,500 in the subways. You're gonna have to raise the police salary to do that because we have the highest attrition rate from the police in history right now. They're all leaving. But safety first, let people know the subways are safe, the streets are safe. Second, we have to build affordable housing. We need 100,000 units the first year because there is no supply. The reason rents are so high is we have a 1% vacancy rate. Now, we can do that. We can build housing, but you have to be organized. You have to be confident. You have to make the government work. I built a new LaGuardia Airport, Kennedy Airport, bridges, Second Avenue subway. So we know how to build, but you have to do it and people have to see the construction quickly. Third, you have to say to the companies that are here, I will work with you on taxes and regulations. Stick with us. I want you to grow. I want to help you grow and start to reach out to businesses and people who left to bring them back. Those are the top 3 priorities.
Is there a message that you want to leave our viewers with right now as they consider going to the ballot box, early voting now, and when they get there next week on election day? Your message.
Is New York will be a socialist economy if Mamdani wins. The city will not survive that as we know it, and it will not recover for a long time. Republicans, there are 2 choices, me or Mamdani. Don't waste your vote. Vote for Curtis as a vote for Mamdani. Get out and vote for me.
Andrew, great to have you this morning. Thank you so much. We'll be watching Andrew Cuomo right here in New York. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Build a website you love with Wix. What are your words? Create.
I'm voting for Cuomo, but I don't want to vote for Cuomo. Why? Because he runs his organization like a mobster. And I'm a little upset with how he handled his governorship, especially during the crisis of 2020. Now, most New Yorkers, they don't really want to vote for Cuomo, especially if you're elderly. And with the whole issue with the nursing homes and the COVID patients and all this, right? But the thing is that you have to swallow your pride and have to vote for him because Mamdani is much worse. And not only will it affect New York, it'll affect other cities around the country. Because if Mamdani wins, this will add hubris to the ultra-libs to push further Marxist agendas in other cities. So you gotta wake up. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. This will help to rev up your cellular metabolism, increase your energy levels, and help to protect your neurons. It's very powerful, and if you're 40 years of age or older, you really need to be taking this every day. Clarity Factor helps to get rid of brain fog so you're not a crazy liberal. Clarity Factor gets rid of that brain fog and allows you to concentrate on tasks, either at work or at home or at school. Take it every day, drink it with filtered water. And over time, what's going to happen is you're going to improve your neuroplasticity, you're going to be able to think faster, and you're going to have better memory. And by improving your neurons, that's slowing down the aging process. So please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. And again, you take my Clarity Factor and you won't be a crazy liberal. Magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and help with brain function. Magnesium also increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin C, dual purpose, helps with your skin, helps to boost up your immune system, and helps with your brain function. So a great stack to boost up that immune system, especially for the fall and the winter season, is to take the vitamin C and magnesium the magnesium and zinc together. And to help with your brain function and cellular metabolism, take the Clarity Factor and stack it with the vitamin B complex. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. And make sure you use discount 5. All caps, discount 5, you get $5 off any order. All right, we're gonna play CNBC talking about Mamdani.
Welcome back, Squawk Box. Early voting underway right here in New York City for the mayor, and some billionaires and companies are spending millions of dollars right now to try to defeat Joe Mamdani. Robert Frank at the table this morning to talk more about that and where we really are in this race.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's certainly a lot of money pouring into this race because you've got pro Cuomo and anti-Mamdani PACs raising over $40 million so far. Several billionaires and prominent New York families, some of them well known to this show, are among the biggest donors. According to campaign filings, Joe Gebbia, he's the co-founder of Airbnb and the chief design officer for the White House, he has given the most since Mamdani's primary win back in June. Gebbia gave $1 million to a PAC called Fix the City and $1 million to one called Defend NYC. Hedge fund billionaire Bill Ackman, who we've been talking about a lot this morning, gave over $1.2 million to both groups just since October. The Lauder family, heirs to the Estee Lauder companies, they have given over $2 million since August. John Hess, the former CEO of Hess Corp, gave $500,000 in August, as did Steve Wynn, the casino mogul. At least 5 members of the Tisch family gave 6 figures, along with hedge funders Dan Loeb and Ricky Sandler. Barry Diller just gave $250,000. That's on top of the $250,000 he gave back in April. And this was interesting. The world's richest woman, Alice Walton, gave $100,000 back in August, even though she listed Bentonville, Arkansas as her current address. A PAC supporting Mamdani, though, has raised about $2 million, including a gift from the daughter of late hedge fund billionaire Jim Simons. Now, for the full list of the big donors in the New York race and what it could mean for the nation's largest real estate market, the tax base, everything else we've been talking about, you can sign up for the Inside Wealth newsletter out tomorrow morning at cnbc.com/Inside Wealth.
Can I take Becky's question from earlier in the hour? Do you believe that the more the quote unquote billionaire class comes out and either donates money or speaks out publicly against Mamdani, that is only like an endorsement for him among the people?
That's certainly the way he's used it on the campaign trail. He has actually prided himself on the number of billionaires who are giving to Cuomo, and yesterday he was talking about, look, they've given more than I'm going to tax them, which of course is not true because this is $40 million. We're talking about $4 billion if he raises taxes on those making $1 million or more by 2%. But he's certainly used it as a foil. Now, none of these people would speak on the record, but off the record, they all say, look, no, this is not self-interest that we're fighting for. We're fighting for New York, someone with experience, someone that's going to keep the city safe and keep this economic boom that we're seeing in New York right now for real estate, back to the office. I mean, New York is doing better right now than I've ever seen. And that's what they're trying to protect.
What is the story there? So with this Jim Simons' daughter, late hedge fund billionaire, giving how much to Mamdani? Is this who is she? Abigail Disney? This is another Nepo baby that's never had to have a job.
But people, they just use that. He was criticizing billionaires, and the other side was saying, well, you're taking money from a daughter of a billionaire.
Okay, but just explain it to me. How does someone benefiting from capitalism or whatever you think Jim Simons did, how is that person giving money to someone who wants?
All children agree with their parents.
Exactly. Does she have a lot? Abigail Disney, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yet, oh no.
Yeah, you've got the Lauder family who are also heirs, and the Tisch family who are also heirs, and the Walton family who are also heirs on the other side. So it's
on the normal side.
Just because
you're on the normal side and benefiting from the system we have in this country that enriched their people, the people that actually did something.
Where do you land on this whole Polymarket tweet from Bill Ackman, where he effectively says out loud, maybe the quiet part, that some people believe that these prediction markets can be manipulated?
Look,
How do we think that?
yeah, exactly.
There's only $1 million.
Joe knows. I mean, I think the money market's right until it's wrong, right? And then the other thing about, if you do look at the polls, Mamdani's lead is narrowing quite a bit. I mean, the latest lead is like 10 points. It had been 20 points recently. I think this could be a close election. We'll see.
You do?
Oh, you do?
It could be. I have no idea. But I'm just saying, if you look at the polls,
it is a good point because whenever I see something like that, and I go, well, or my son, well, Polymarket's at 99%. Right. So if someone is fixing that, then that
It's self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Are we finally rethinking all of this gamble that's taking place between this, the NBA, what we've heard?
One would hope.
Gee, what do you think happened?
No, we're not.
I mean, I do think between all the money coming into this race, I mentioned, there will be a lot of voting participation in it.
No, that is true.
At Corient, wealth management begins and ends with you. We believe the more personal the solution.
I used to sleep on the street, so I know how tough our city's housing crisis is.
This November, New Yorkers can vote on affordable housing fast track and other city charter reform.
Flip your ballot over and vote on questions 2 through 6.
Here is reaction, author of the book, How to Test Negative for Stupid, a huge New York Times bestseller, and why Washington never will. Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. Congratulations, Senator. Well, I think you've proven that time and time again. Well, I mean, they say they never use the word Nazi. We prove otherwise. Then they want to offer everything for free. Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't the Senate hold a vote last week about funding the military and a vote today to keep SNAP benefits around for 42 million Americans, and the Democrats voted no?
Yes, and I listened to your monologue, Sean, with all of these different characters. I thought to myself, even duct tape can't fix stupid. I don't know Miss Wallace. I've watched her a little bit. I remember when she worked for President Bush. I suppose she's not as bad as some members of the liberal media, but that's faint praise. That's like it's like being the smartest person on the View. I'm going to give Ms. Wallace the benefit of the doubt and assume that she said what she said right after her morning beer. The Democrats have accused the President Trump of everything except abandoning his children to wolves. They daily call him a racist and a Nazi. The Democrats are angry. They're angry for 2 reasons. They're angry because President Trump won the election. The American people spoke. My Democratic colleagues need to just drink a big old glass of get over it and let's move on. They're mad, number 2, they're mad that the American people are mad about the shutdown. It was so needless. I voted 13 times to open government back up. The Democrats have voted 13 times to keep it shut down. They don't want to pay food stamps. They don't want to pay the military. They want to use this as leverage to gain more money to spend. Senator Schumer, my colleague, greedily wanted to become the face of the shutdown. I was looking at a poll today of what the American people think of Senator Schumer. It was an Economist YouGov poll, which is very left of center. The American people, in the American people's opinion, Senator Schumer he's a wet match in a dark cave. He polls right up there with clubbing baby seals. He's got a 30% approval rating, a 60% disapproval rating, and 10% of folks polled just didn't want to pause their video games to answer. It's not working. The American people may not read Aristotle every day, but they get it. This is not a policy shutdown. This is a political shutdown. And I keep waiting for my Democratic colleagues to come to their senses.
So there's a group called Welcome. They consulted hundreds of thousands of voters. They did this over 6 months. And what they found is 70% of voters think the Democratic Party's out of touch, that they're prioritizing LGBTQAI plus and the rights of criminals over law and order and safety and security and secure borders. They voted against the largest tax cut in history. They voted against cutting taxes on tips and overtime and Social Security. They think it's, democracy in action to pay more money for gasoline, which is the lifeblood of our economy. They're on the wrong side of every issue, but these are 80, 20, 90, 10 issues. There's been no reflection
introspection, or course correction. So I don't see them changing. And now if you look at the front runners for president, you got Buttigieg, Kamala, Gavin, AOC. Is that the future of this party now?
Well, I don't think they have a future until they stand up to the moon wing of their party. The moon wing, though, the socialist wing is in control. They're about to elect Mr. Mamdani, mayor of New York. And this group, we remember them from the Biden days when they had influence with President Biden. They hyperventilate if you use the wrong pronoun. They think Abraham Lincoln and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and Dr. Zeus and Mr. Potato Head are a bunch of racists. They think children ought to be able to change genders at recess. The American people don't think that. And many Democrats don't. I want to be fair. But the moon wing does, and they're in control.
I mean, who are the ones except for John Fetterman speaking out?
None.
There you go.
Because they're scared. They're not scared of Senator Schumer. They're scared of Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. And sooner or later, well, I don't know what's going to happen, Sean, but you know, as a Republican, this is probably good for Republicans, but I think it's bad for the country. I believe in competition, and I think New York is the greatest city in the world, and I don't want to see it ruined. But sometimes
it was the greatest city in the world.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let God take care of it, because if you take care of it, you'll end up in jail. I mean, there's some things you just can't change.
Well, we appreciate it. Senator, congratulations on the success of the book. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It has a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website. This will target multiple systems. It'll help to improve your cardiovascular system, help with brain function, help to build muscle, rev up your metabolism, and increase your energy levels. It'll also help to control your A1C levels. So you get a lot of benefit from taking this every day. This is part of my protocol to slow down the aging process. That protocol is taking a multivitamin, taking a probiotic, taking the Max 35 or Cleanse, taking C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, lignans, and Boomer Boost. And that will slow down the aging process. That's the protocol, and you build off of that. Now, taking Boomer Boost, you're going to see the effects. You're going to feel the effects of it within 72 hours. You're going to have more energy. It's going to be a steady burn of energy. You're going to have more vitality. This is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, smoothie, or even with milk. I mix it with soft foods like hummus, but take it every day. And what you will notice is that your energy levels are steady throughout the day, and you'll have more vitality. Now, by taking this longer term, you're actually going to see the effects of it improving your immune system, your endocrine system, your brain function, your musculature. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Also, go to my store and be prepared for the fall and winter season by taking the Nano Silver soaps. You can get it in charcoal, tea tree, lemongrass, peppermint, and also lavender. So use these structural nano silver soaps every day, but especially during the fall and the winter. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And another great supplement that I have is omega-3. Omega-3 will help with your cardiovascular health. It'll bring down inflammation and help you to control your lipid profile. And resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, get rid of cells that are in senescence, help to soak up free radicals and improve the health of your mitochondria so your energy levels go up. By taking resveratrol, you're also improving the basal layer of your skin. This is part of the reason why that people that take resveratrol look younger. Stack this with C60, ubiquinol, or NAD+. to get the max benefits. You can also stack this with Clarity Factor. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. All right, with that, let's go to Bloomberg.
Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Soybeans. China purchases first cargoes of U.S. soybeans this season. Scarlet Field, Paul Sweeney live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming live on YouTube. You want to talk soybeans? You want to talk pork bellies? You talk to Mike McClellan, Senior Commodity Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Mike, is this good news for U.S. farmers that I guess China's back buying some of our beans?
Yes, it is, Paul. It's just obviously more rational, expected news. About a month ago, the price of soybeans in Brazil reached about a 20% premium to U.S. soybeans. And for the first time in history, China wasn't buying any of our soybeans, the world's largest demand pull, importer. So this agreement is a win-win. Mr. Z looks good. U.S. farmers are happier. The soybeans have popped up to $11 a bushel. I think that's a pretty good resistance. And I'm putting the final touches on my November outlook for commodities. And I'm going to put that level as the key inflection point. If soybeans can stay above 11, the whole commodity sector might be okay. And I think the risks are it goes lower because we're just starting planting in South America. And that's where the key source of pressure has been massive supply out of Brazil and Argentina.
So when China wasn't buying U.S. soybeans, what did that do to supply? Is there still an oversupply of soybeans in the U.S.?
Yes, hello, Scarlett. Well, there is now. There's an oversupply of corn because last year's farmers saw it coming. They saw the lower prices. And they tilted away from soybeans and planted the more corn. We had the best crop ever. There's massive corn, so that price is still kind of hovering low. But soybeans have been the center of geopolitics, partly because China's the world's largest importer, and U.S. used to be a large exporter. We used to export 50% of soybeans, but now it's down to 40% because all that supply came on in Brazil. Most notably, it came on because of a big spike in prices in 2022. You see the elasticity there, and that's the problem with commodities is sometimes when prices go up, you just bring on more supply. Now we're heading towards a lower price cure. But soybeans are in the center of geopolitics. And the key thing is they bounced. They're up about 10% in the year within broader bear markets. And it's the time you have to be very careful. We just get another normal production season out of Brazil. Pressure will continue as that supply just remains massive.
All right, here's the dumb farmer question of the day, my ignorance here. If I'm a farmer like corn, soybeans, wheat, am I reaping right now? Am I sowing right now? Or what am I doing in like October, November?
You're basically hurting. We're right near the end of harvest. And at this time of year, you're really active in the market. You're either marketing that corn, you're putting it into the market, as we say in Illinois, bringing it to the river to get down the Illinois River, or you're putting it in a bin and storing it. And so generally, or you're putting it into someone else to pay for storage. And soybeans are the cheapest to store commodity, typically, among most commodities, except for gold. So a lot of those have been put in the bin. I think they're being put out the market now. Of course, if there's exports, we haven't had those exports, at least not to China. Corn still probably sticking in the bin. You hang on a little bit, but that's the key thing. Prices are so low now that we're right near the cost of production. So the corn belt's in a bit of hurt right now.
All right, let's switch over away from soft commodities and look at metals. Copper prices in London climbing to a record high. I'm looking at London copper prices up 1.3%. In New York, they're up about 1.8%. What's going on there, Mike?
That's a big shift, Scarlett. I appreciate it. Switching over to the elastic commodities to the less elastic commodities and metal. And the key thing about copper is it's going up for kind of the wrong reasons. It's supply constraint. There's been some issues this year with production, most notably in Indonesia and South America. So it's curtailing supplies and prices are going up on that. It's usually not enduring. Oftentimes they'll bring on that more supply and create incentive to reduce demand a little bit. So that's a bit of an issue, but it's also U.S. copper in the center of the world universe. It popped to a new high early in the year, got to around $6 a pound. It's dropped down to $4. Now it's running just above $5 a pound. The key thing for copper is it's highly correlated to the stock market. And copper will be fine as long as the U.S. stock market keeps going up, and that to me is a key risk that this highly economically sensitive commodity might drop if the U.S. stock market drops. And so it's all kind of dependent on stocks now.
I have no idea what Mike McClellan does for a living. It's just what's tied to what? What's correlated for what? I don't.
It's all
it trades all over. These things trade in London. They trade in Chicago. Different price. I don't know. All right, let's go to the easy one. I think I understand. Seems like gold is holding that 4,000 support level, Mike. Is that a real number? Or is that just a round number I picked out of the air?
Well, gold likes these round numbers. Remember, it bumped up to 2,000 for almost 4 years. Well, gold was really bullish, but I had to eat that for 3-4 years, and finally it's popped up 3,000, now 4,000. But it's so extremely stretched versus most moving averages. People like Tom King would say like 3 or 4 standard deviations versus a 20, a 40, 50, or 60-month moving average. So the history of years, I switched a little away from the fundamentals, and I switched to risk manager say it's so expensive here, you have to be very careful buying. So a time correction around 4,000 would be quite bullish. But typically from levels this high, you can easily get a 20 to 30% correction in a normal bull market. That's why I think gold is just so ahead of itself. And the key thing I'll end with is this disparity gold being up almost 55% on the year and crude oil being down 15%. That disparity, about 70%, is the most ever, and it surpasses about 60% in 2008. It's not a good sign for the global economy.
All right, good stuff, Michael McGlone, and we covered a lot of ground there.
But we didn't even get to portfolios. I mean, is portfolio
We're
called?
doing that all the time.
All the time.
And
Exactly.
one day we're going to get Mike McGlone on portfolios. Mike McGlone, of course, joining us from Miami and giving us the lowdown on all the commodities. He is Bloomberg Intelligence's senior commodities strategist. So China's buying soybeans, and finally some good news on the U.S.-China trade front. And of course, the president and Xi Jinping will be meeting later on tonight, our time, and we'll see what this all shakes out to be.
All right. For our listeners in the U.S., a reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on SiriusXM.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley is going to help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. By bringing down inflammation and detoxifying your body, you're improving your immune system, your endocrine system. Super important. And please go to my store and get the dual-purpose deodorants. You use this as a daily deodorant, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high-quality ingredients that are in these deodorant bars. It's for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. Please go to my store and get the dual-purpose deodorants. Again, detoxifying your body is super important to help with the immune system and the endocrine system. Zeolite, another great supplement that I have that will help to detoxify your body. This will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Take it every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink it with filtered water. Do that every day, and you're detoxifying your body, helping your endocrine system, your immune system, and even your brain function. By detoxifying your body, your organ systems will perform better. Make sure you drink it with filtered water and stay away from processed foods.
Result in a 25 basis point rate cut. Jeffrey Cleveland will join us to give us his take on where the economy is headed now that the Fed is going to cut rates once again this month. And after that, we'll speak with Anurag Rana, Bloomberg Intelligence technology analyst, to give us his preview of 3 of the Mag 7 names that will be reporting earnings today. Microsoft, Alphabet among them. So a lot to cover. Meta as well. So 3 out of 5 this week. It's going to be big news for the big tech world. All right. In the meantime, let's bring in John Tucker for Bloomberg Business Flash. John.
And right now, we are at records after yesterday's record close. S&P 500, 15 points higher. That is up 0.2% right now. And the Dow Jones Industrial Edge up 241 points. That's a rise of 0.5%. NASDAQ 100 up 120 points. That is up 0.5%. And as you say, 2 o'clock, we're going to get the Fed decision. Ahead of that, more policy reactive 2-year yield, a basis point higher, 3.5%. The 10-year yield right now, just about 2 basis points, just shy of 4% at 3.99 right now. And you have a tale of 2 stocks. NVIDIA achieving a historic $5 trillion market cap, up over 5% right now. And then the worst performing stock in the S&P 500, Pfizer shares, ticker symbol FI, they are down a whopping 41%, slashing the adjusted earnings per share guidance for the full year. Caterpillar shares, they are gaining right now, close to 13%, reporting adjusted earnings per share for the third quarter that beat Wall Street expectations. Julian Emmanuel says, you know what, stocks can go higher. He's got a lifted year-end target for next year for the S&P 500.
But I will say, over the last week, I've been getting sort of derisive jokes about that price target not being aggressive enough. And that to us signals maybe there's a little bit of too much exuberance.
He wouldn't say what those jokes were, by the way. John Malone is going to step down as chair of Formula One owner Liberty Media and Liberty Global, according to the Financial Times, citing people familiar with the matter. He is 84 years old. Today's the anniversary. You know what happened 13 years ago today? Not exactly a happy anniversary. Hurricane Sandy hitting the region. Yeah. And we are still dealing with the aftermath of that. You just have to go through one of the train tunnels to see the work continuing.
Or you just you go down to Mount Logan, New Jersey, the seashore, and monster houses, all 10, 15, $20 million homes. Until you get to an empty lot where that they chose for whatever reason not to rebuild.
Yeah.
So it's a strange situation.
Anyway, we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Starling Ball.
All right, good stuff. Thank you so much, John Tucker. Let's get some individual equity movers now and bring in our market drivers, Nora Melinda, Bloomberg Television Markets correspondent. Nora, get us started. NVIDIA, the big name here.
The big name of the day here, and almost feels like every day at this point. That's ticker NVDA, and we are seeing the company roaring up as much as 5.6%. This is the highest level on record. Of course, we know that the company topped the $5 trillion mark, the first company to do that in terms of market capitalization. But of course, we also know that this is a lot of this being really driven by a lot of the plans and partnerships that they've been rolling out. But additionally, Trump saying that he will discuss the company's Blackwell AI processors with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. And so this, of course, will really getting Wall Street really excited about what that could mean here for the company and just the broader landscape here. So you are seeing shares on a tear up about 55% year to date.
Wow. All right. Very good. I'll tell you what used to be like a hot stock, hot sector. Telecommunications, Verizon reported today as well.
They did report revenue. We saw a lot of different metrics that came through here, but they did report a loss in terms of wireless phone subscribers for the third quarter. But they do really have an aggressive strategy that they're really trying to roll out here to gain subscribers. So they're trying to focus away from emphasizing their network and towards improving more or less the customer experience here. So you're seeing shares of Verizon up for their best day since July here, up as much as 5.1%. On the year, not looking like there's too much going on here, up about 1% so far year to date.
Well, it's interesting. This is the new CEO, Dan Schulman, plans to, quote, aggressively transform Verizon's culture and cost structure to improve the customer experience and compete effectively. That's, I mean, you think about, Verizon, these big telecom companies, that might be a hard thing to do.
Absolutely.
These aircraft carriers of companies.
And I feel like people are kind of like locked into whatever company they work with. I mean, I feel like you have your one phone provider and let some other hot new deal comes out, you pretty much stick with the legacy that you have.
But churn is a big thing in wireless.
That's also true.
Yeah. So
when it's time to upgrade your phone, that's when you start looking at
right. He's like shopping around, cast at that, see who gets you the best deal.
All right, let's take a look at Fiserv.
Fiserv, not a pretty day here. Actually, the worst day ever on record for the company. This is a fintech company that we're talking about, falling for its lowest level since 2018. This is after its results really confused Wall Street. They suffered a record plunge after slashing their outlook for full year earnings. And third quarter results that really did not fall well in terms of Wall Street expectations here. So you really are seeing the stock taking a beating today in particular, but it hasn't really been a pretty picture this year totally here. I mean, shares have been down 64% so far this year. So clearly a troubled company right now.
Very good, Norma Linda. Thank you. Thank you so much, Norma Linda. We appreciate that. And you can get that Stock Movers podcast anywhere you get your podcast. And hear Nora talk about what's moving.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This will bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase, detoxify your body, and help you to build muscle. Do some resistance training, take the Gladiator Barley, and by doing that, you're also controlling your A1C levels. And get the collagen. The collagen is a dual-purpose supplement. This will help with your skin, your hair, your nails, your cartilage, your joint health, your musculature, and your bone density. Please go to my store and get this month's supply of collagen. It's very high quality, Make sure you do some resistance training.
By saying that it is an honor to stay up and talk to you guys. That's what makes this whole trip worth it. But ahead of this highly anticipated meeting, as you well know, we had thought that there was going to be basically this generic framework that would likely extend the trade truce that's currently in place and set to extend by November 10th. So there's been a pretty hard deadline here for the leaders to meet and ultimately make that extension. We heard from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent going into this week, and he laid out what sort of deliverables we might be getting, including that China would resume its purchases, as people familiar tell us today here at Bloomberg News that they have so far purchased at least 2 cargo shipments when it comes to soybeans, but we are still waiting on some further details, including what this is going to look like going forward. We had also learned that China was going to back off its newly unveiled export curbs when it comes to critical and rare earth minerals. In exchange, the U.S. appeared to have effectively taken that threat of an additional 100% tariff off the table. But since then, we've learned that this isn't just about pulling back the recent escalation in tensions. We heard from President Trump earlier today telling reporters aboard Air Force One, as you've been discussing, that he's going to bring up NVIDIA's Blackwell chip with Chinese President Xi Jinping. This would be a major win for Beijing, which would like the access to this advanced semiconductor. Also, the company, which has been trying to regain Chinese market access since 2022. Now, of course, this isn't a done deal. We're not quite sure exactly what this conversation would entail, but that's something to keep your eye on. And then Paul and Scarlett, quickly I'll add, also keep your eye on what happens when it comes to that tariff linked to fentanyl. This feels like one of those realistic, tangible deliverables that we might get that could actually move the tariff rate when it comes to Beijing. Both sides have said that they have made progress when it comes to the issue. 20% of the tariff currently in place on China is tied to fentanyl concerns. This would very likely look like Beijing putting forward some sort of solution like export curbs on so-called precursor chemicals that go into fentanyl. This has been a big priority for this White House, and we'll see if there's any sort of deliverable change here.
All right, thank you for that complete wrap up of what we're likely to see. You mentioned NVIDIA, and we know that President Trump yesterday said that he would be meeting with Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA. The company yesterday, of course, holding its AI conference in Washington, D.C. The stock climbed to a record high. Jensen Huang talking about how there really isn't an AI bubble. Do we know if that conversation between the president and Jensen Huang took place? Because I'm curious what kind of leverage Jensen Huang has with the White House. He's also seen as kind of a go-between with Beijing as well.
Right, that's exactly right, Scarlett, particularly when you think at how some of President Trump's advisors and his actual administration have been a little bit more hawkish when it comes to China. I was speaking about this earlier this morning on Bloomberg Television, but this entire scenario reminded me of how then Senator Marco Rubio, almost a year ago today, sent a letter to then Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo to urge her to essentially put a halt, a blanket denial on any sort of U.S. export licenses when it comes to critical technology like semiconductors. So it is very clear that Jensen Huang has an influence with the president. In fact, he was not there yesterday at that Tokyo business leader reception. President Trump had called out Apple's Tim Cook, who was there, asked him if he was coming here to South Korea. He's not. So it's clear that there's been a push and pull here when it comes to President Trump and some of these leaders in the private sector, like how we saw Apple's Tim Cook really have that dominant role during Trump 1.0, the first Trump administration. And now we've really seen Jensen Huang and his relationship with President Trump develop.
Paying off for sure. Tyler, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your reporting throughout this very long day for you. Again, it is midnight or past midnight over there in South Korea. Tyler Kendall, Bloomberg Washington correspondent. She is accompanying President Trump on his trip through Asia. And again, just timing-wise, President Trump and Xi are scheduled to speak at 10 p.m. East Coast time tonight. That's 11 a.m. local time in Korea tomorrow. So we'll have full reporting.
You used your IC2 function on the Bloomberg.
I did. Thank you very much. Exactly. So anyway, that's where we go. And, oh, by the way, if all the earnings and all the geopolitics isn't enough, it is Fed Day. That means at 2 p.m. we get a statement from the Fed. At 2:30 we get a press conference from the Fed Chairman Jay Powell. And most importantly, at 1:30, focus on the Fed. Tom Keene, John Farrow will simulcast that with Bloomberg Television. They'll cover you all the way through the Fed Day. Ira Jersey joins us here. He does this interest rate stuff for a living. Somehow he gets paid. He's actually built a career on interest rates in the treasury market. I have no idea how he's done it, but he's done it. He's the best on the street. We appreciate getting a few minutes of his time. Ira, what's the challenge or what's the opportunity for Fed Chairman Jay Powell today, do you think?
Yeah, I think he has to be a little bit cautious, right? Because he doesn't have all of the data. So it's going to be difficult for him, I think, to significantly change any outlook or view of the members of the Federal Reserve. So it's going to be, basically saying, look, we're going to cut interest rates. We see some fragility in certain parts of the economy. So we're going to cut cautiously, right? And what does cautious mean? Some people think that means they're going to maybe skip December and then go January and the like. Now, it's not their normal operating procedure. When you remember Alan Greenspan and his measured pace comments, a couple of decades ago, that meant 25 basis points every meeting, right? So being cautious doesn't necessarily mean a skip, but it can, right? And I think that that's an important and something that he can convey is that, look, we're not necessarily going to continuously cut interest rates down to 2% or something like that. So he'll say that. And then importantly, it's the funding markets. That's really what we're looking at today, especially when you see what happened to the repo market yesterday, and you saw SOFR today printing at 4.31% above the upper bound of the Fed's policy rate. And I think that, that's showing some stress. And that I would be surprised if he's asked a lot of questions about that. But I think for the Treasury market participants and the things that I look at, that's going to be the key today.
Why are there signs of stress in the funding markets?
Yeah, so there's this thing called the lowest comfortable level of reserves, right? So banks have reserve balances, which are assets for them, they're liabilities for the Federal Reserve, and those go up and down because of different changes in the Fed's liability. And they've been consistently going down over the last couple of years as the Fed's run off its balance sheet, right? The so-called quantitative tightening. And we're reaching the point now, and it's pretty clear that we're close to this point where we no longer have abundant reserves. And the thing is, there's no such thing as ample. I don't like that word. I think the Fed thinks that there's something called ample. You either have enough reserves, you have ample reserves, or you don't. And the problem is it's like a switch, right? So on a dime, you can go from having enough reserves in the system that everything's working properly, and then the next second, like we saw in September of 2019, you don't have enough reserves, and the market needs reserves added to the system.
And that's a dynamic number. We don't know where it is.
It changes all the time, right? And bank reserve balances and demand for reserves is much higher today than it was prior to the global financial crisis. So all these people who think we can go back to a $1 trillion Fed balance sheet, they're living in a fantasy land as far as I'm concerned. And part of the reason is because bank reserves are the easiest high quality liquid assets to own. And so there's always going to be demand for these reserves by these large financial institutions. And unless you change regulations and change some of the capital rules, that's always going to be the case. And if there's not enough of them, then interest rates in the short end, so overnight interest rates, just shoot up. And that's what the Fed wants to avoid. So if nothing else, even if the Fed continues quantitative tightening, which we think they might for another 6 weeks, they will have to announce that they're going to do more repurchase agreement operations and what we call open market operations. And this is important because if the funding market breaks, there's no way that asset prices stay where they are. They are going down in a hurry.
But what's the risk level of that happening at this stage?
I think the fact that the Fed is looking at it and the Fed understands that they have to do something, they need to do more TOMOs. If you read a lot of street research, our own research here at Bloomberg Intelligence, everyone knows that the Fed is going to need to step in and add reserves to the system. They were hoping that the standing repo facility would be enough, and that got tapped this morning for $10 billion. Mostly mortgage-backed securities, interestingly, was the collateral that was put there, suggesting that there's a bank or two that really does need some reserves. $10 billion is not a massive amount given the size of our economy and the financial markets. But if the Fed is not prepared to add even more reserves, right, another 20, 30, $40 billion of reserves, you could wind up seeing a significant uptick in the funding markets. And we have things like bond settlements. So treasuries we're settling about $80 billion of treasuries between tomorrow and Friday at bank month end. So we're going to see some more volatility in these front-end funding markets.
So we've seen yields kind of stuck in a range the last few days. There's been a data vacuum, but there's been a data vacuum all month, so that's not new. Is there going to be anything in this FOMC meeting or what Jay Powell says that could change where yields are?
Yeah, I don't think so much the 10-year. In fact, I think the 10-year is pretty close to fair value. A lot of our models suggest that just based on the economic data that we have. Yeah, plus or minus 20 basis points, right? Won't be a surprise. But the front end, the front end can move a lot if he shocks us. But
I doubt that he will.
All right, Ira Jersey, thank you so much. He is, of course, Bloomberg Intelligence's rate strategy here at BI. And we're, of course, counting you down to that FOMC decision at 2 p.m. and Jay Powell speaking at 2:30. We'll have full coverage on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television starting at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. This is Bloomberg.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is the Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom with this Bloomberg Business Flash. We're brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This is for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitments. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. S&P 500, 17 points higher, up 0.25%, 6908 on the index. That's record. Dow Jones Industrial Average up 247 points. That's a record. And the Nasdaq 100 up 115 points, up just about 0.5%. That's a record there. Jensen Huang's spree of deals launching the AI frenzy to new heights. NVIDIA achieving an historic $5 trillion market cap. About the next two biggest companies, Microsoft and Apple, with valuations about $4 trillion each. And NVIDIA shares today up 3.9%. And again, after the record close yesterday, stocks are pushing higher. The Fed, of course, widely expected to cut 25 basis points today. After the close, Meta, Microsoft, and Alphabet reporting earnings. The payments processor, Fiserv, seeing shares plunge. They slashed their adjusted earnings per share guidance for the full year. Worst performing stock in the S&P 500 today. It is down a whopping 42% in today's market. You know, Starbucks has poured millions of dollars into rehabbing its stores and trying to get more people through the doors. Also trying to get them to stay longer, attracting and keeping customers, the key pillar of the turnaround for the new CEO. But neither one of those things is happening. The share of visits longer than 10 minutes has shrunk since Brian Niccol took over the helm in September of 2024. This is according to data from Placer AI. I guess, what do they, is there a special name for somebody who hangs out in Starbucks?
Yeah, I think it's these people that work from home that are just, you know.
He means slackers.
Slackers.
No, not slackers, but.
That's what Paul meant.
What's this?
Yeah, I think, well, this
You know,
is the
we've
thing.
got people who hang out in malls or mall rats and
Yeah.
hang out in Starbucks. Is there a special name?
I think half the US GDP is, you know, done in Starbucks. People just doing whatever they do, their side hustle gig.
Well, my daughter loves to go there to study, so.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That's a good thing. Anyway, we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul Scarlett.
All right, good stuff. Thank you so much, John Tucker. You know, we don't have any data anymore, Paul Sweeney, and the Fed is a data-dependent central bank.
That's what they tell us.
So what do they say about the state of the economy?
It's like the rest of us, they're just kind of going, what's the alternative investment, WLT, ALT-E? Keep going.
Okay, all right. Paul's going to give us some insight from that world. But in the meantime, let's go now to Jeffrey Cleveland. He is chief economist over at Hayden and Regal to join us and talk a little bit about the U.S. economy here. And Jeffrey, do you think we're going to get anything actionable from the Fed chair when it comes to understanding how this week's layoffs, and you know, there's some big numbers here. Amazon, 14,000 workers to be shed. UPS, 34,000 workers to be shed, will lead to more aggressive cutting of rates in 2026.
Yeah, we'll see. I think, you know, he's in the same boat that we are. We're talking to all of our clients all over the US and around the world, getting the sense of how they see the labor market. I think by and large, they see the labor market softening in through the September period and into October. So I think that's an interesting data point. I'm sure policymakers are doing the same thing, canvassing their contacts. I also think we have enough data to go on. I mean, the jobs data, whether it's from ADP or BLS that we had, shows the same trend, which was a slowdown. We had yet to see really layoff activity. You know, we've been looking at the state level unemployment insurance claims, and we haven't really seen that feed through. So the headlines, are worth paying attention to, and we'll just have to see how that plays out. But given the Fed's over 4% on the funds rate, I think the safe thing, the easy thing to do is just cut rates today. I mean, we already had one rate cut earlier, Bank of Canada, getting back closer to 2%. They're probably at or below neutral on theirs. So I think the Fed should maybe follow their lead and move in that direction.
All right, WSL space ALTE go on the Bloomberg terminal. That'll get you to private and proprietary alternative U.S. economic indicators. There you go. If you think the Bloomberg should have it, it has it. That's how I.
You just got to dig around a little bit.
Exactly right. Jeffrey, let's assume that the Fed does cut today. What do you think would be a reasonable cadence of their future cuts?
From our perspective, we think that inflation is moderating. The tariff inflation that we are seeing is a little bit of noise. And if you try to look out over the next 12 months, we can build a plausible case to get back closer to 2% on core PCE by the end of next year, so the end of 2026. If we're right on that, even if we're in the ballpark, I think rates should be quite a bit lower. I think back to 3% on the funds rate. So we have a cut today. We have another cut in December, and then we have 3 next year as well. So that's kind of how we're seeing things shake out. The only real interesting question is if we're going to have much weaker economy signaled by the weakness in payrolls, or if things can pick back up. Possible things could pick back up in 2026. So that's the interesting question. I'd like to see how Chair Powell answers that question today.
I suspect the answer will include some version of AI because of productivity gains.
Yes.
I want to get your take on inflation. Why is it that the consensus view is that tariffs cause only a one-time price effect?
I think, we look at it as, tariffs as a tax on imports. So it is going to push up the cost of goods. But when we talk about inflation, we're talking about the general level of prices, so all prices. And if you look beyond goods and you look at non-housing services, for example, and you look at housing, both of those categories have actually dragged core inflation a bit lower year to date. And those other two categories account for, I would say, roughly 75% of core PCE. So when you're thinking about overall inflation, which is what we're trying to do, yes, there's some pressure from goods and tariffs, but I think it's being offset by everything else we're seeing. And the softness in housing, so rents and owner's equivalent rent, we expect that to continue in 2026. And if the labor market remains, somewhat weak, then non-housing services should also moderate. So that's how we're thinking about it.
All right, Jeffrey Cleveland, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Jeffrey Cleveland, he's an economist over there, paid in Regal out there in Los Angeles.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to allow you to get into the 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So you're detoxifying your central nervous system, consolidating memory, and you'll be well rested. By having good sleep regularly will slow down the aging process and improve your brain function. Myotrol helps with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with that gene expression. In addition, Myotrol will also help to improve your mitochondrial health. By taking Myotrol every day, drink it with filtered water, and do some resistance training, it'll help you to build muscle and maintain muscle.
NVIDIA's technology, so there is a real symbiosis. We haven't seen any slowdown from them. We'll get some signaling after the results come out in their various conference calls about what their plans are for investment in this area going forward. But at least based on yesterday's GTC event here in Washington, the big industry confab sponsored by NVIDIA, we're really getting a sense of no sign of an end to the momentum. And Jensen Huang was emphatic in saying that he sees no sign of a bubble coming and that he expects another $500 billion in revenue over the next 5 quarters tied to all of that.
I'm so glad you bring that up because we wanted to play some sound from that conversation Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, had with our Ed Ludlow, Bloomberg Tech co-host. Ed spoke with both Jensen Huang and Nokia's CEO, Justin Hotard. Let's take a listen.
I don't believe we're in an AI bubble. And the reason for that is we're going through a natural transition from an old computing model based on general purpose computing to accelerated computing. We also know that AI has now become good enough because of reasoning capability, research capabilities, its ability to think. It's now generating tokens and now generating intelligence that's worth paying for.
Mike, what gets my attention is Jensen Huang coming out and saying definitively that he does not think there's an AI bubble. Do you think any of the CEOs of the 3 companies that are reporting today, the 2 that are reporting tomorrow, are likely to go out on a limb and say that?
They have put so much into artificial intelligence themselves that they would be loath to issue any kind of a bubble warning. That'll come much more from the outsiders. The interesting thing, though, is when NVIDIA talks about AI, it is not thinking just ChatGPT and the other chatbots that we are familiar with. They're talking about so many more things and uses. And one priority for Jensen Huang is really to accelerate the adoption of artificial intelligence across the economy in a variety of platforms. It ranges from robotics to cybersecurity to business automation, all sorts of things that they were talking about and really infused all the partnerships and deals that the company was announcing yesterday. We could do a quick review, Scarlett. It's Uber, it's Lucid when it comes to transportation, it's CrowdStrike when it comes to cybersecurity, it's Palantir when it comes to business automation. So the company really is not only trying to push this narrative, but it's trying to show it as well. And they even began to talk about some of the edge case uses for quantum computing, which is another area of keen interest for investors. And it's been an area that NVIDIA has been edging toward in the past few years.
Michael, there are some investors out there that are obviously a little reticent about this whole AI story and the momentum behind it. Maybe they want to tap the brakes every once in a while. And I think their argument is basically, okay, I get the big spending by the hyperscalers, but what's the return on investment again? Every once in a while we hear from those people. Where do you think that narrative is today?
Well, it remains one of the big questions. When does revenue actually become something measurable and tied to artificial intelligence use? And Jensen Huang was trying to point yesterday to, look, AI has not only the use case, but it is actually starting to pay off. The models are starting to pay off. And this is why he sees the world not being in a bubble right now. But it is something that companies will have to try to demonstrate more visibly as they release results to justify all the expenditures that they have been making on data centers and on all the technology that goes into them to power these models that they intend to use.
All right, Michael Shepard, really appreciate your joining us and giving us a wrap up of what we're seeing right now. NVIDIA, once again, $5 trillion in market cap. $5 trillion, Paul, that is a lot of zeros.
That is. And when you see the movements in these stocks, I'm just thinking some of these big tech stocks that have been announcing these big investments with each other and Chat GPT, and the amount of dollars, the absolute dollars of gains and losses in the stock market every day on some of these names is staggering, because you are, a 5% move in a $4 trillion market cap stock. That's real money.
Right, and the spending that they're all doing on products or services and things like chips from each other, that is responsible for a big chunk of the GDP as well. So if anyone slows down their spending just a little bit or pulls back a little bit, that could have a ripple effect.
Yep, absolutely. So year to date, just for those keeping score, at home, NVIDIA up 55% year to date. So pretty solid return there. Mr. Wang, obviously with his personal stake in the company, shooting up the rich.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. You can get it in veggie cap version or powdered version. By taking a good probiotic, you're going to help with your gut biome, improve your immune system, improve your cellular metabolism and your overall digestion, and improve your brain function. With a good gut biome, you're going to improve the communication between your gut and your brain. You're going to be able to sleep better, consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and be well rested. And when you do that, you're slowing down the aging process. Good health starts at the gut. Please go to my store and get the veggie cap version or the powdered version of the probiotics. Take them every day. Make sure you drink them with filtered water. And also get the complete multivitamin. The complete multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly. The foundation of my anti-aging protocol is taking a good multivitamin and stacking it with the probiotics. That's the foundation. Then you take the Max 35 or Cleanse. That will help to boost up your immune system. Take C60 to soak up the free radicals. Take the turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up the immune system. And Boomer Boost to rev up the metabolism and increase your energy levels. That stack will slow down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's play CNBC talking about AI layoffs.
Here is the question of the morning. Are AI layoffs real, or are they a scapegoat for what's going on in the employment picture in this country? Christina Putzinello joins us now with that story. Good morning.
Good morning, Andrew. Amazon, Chegg, Microsoft, Meta, Salesforce, the list continues. Tech companies just are cutting tens of thousands of jobs, and some of them are blaming AI. But at NVIDIA's GTC and DC yesterday, top CEOs were telling us something completely different about what's driving these cuts. For example, Perplexity CEO says the AI narrative is missing the point.
Overhiring they did in the COVID era, but they didn't actually need to. The results of that are being seen now. So correlation doesn't imply causation. Like it's not because of AI that people are losing jobs.
And CoreWeave CEO Michael Tractor frames it as part of a bigger pattern that just happens in tech history.
During each technical
revolution. There is a rotation that occurs. And I think one of the roles for government is going to be to assist the rotation that's required to retrain, to repurpose, to allow people to build careers.
And CrowdStrike CEO George Kurtz told me AI elevates workers into controllers while AI can handle all of the grunt work. So essentially working alongside AI, that's what humans will do. The reality though is just more complicated. Amazon, cut 14,000 jobs citing AI. Microsoft eliminated over 15,000 this year while investing about 80 billion in AI. Meta slashed 600 from its AI unit. Salesforce cut 4,000. You get the point. All while posting almost record profits. The CEOs at GTC aren't just blind.
Just use some common sense. If all these companies are spending so much money on AI, do you really think that they're going to use humans? Are they spending more money on humans? Or are they spending more money on digits? They're spending more money on digits. So don't be surprised that they need less workers.
I replaced the story their own industry is pushing. They say companies are using AI as cover to finally correct years of bloated headcount and hiring mistakes.
Okay, so, well, here's the thing I think about. NVIDIA at $5 trillion, that's a question about where we're all going. But the other piece of it on the employment side is for all of these companies and NVIDIA and the like to get to these valuations, they have to create remarkable amounts of productivity. So if they're as successful as we all want them to be, it also means that maybe there's going to be folks who don't have jobs to ultimately pay for all of this.
Yeah, well, to your point, we're going to have
a round trip idea.
Yeah, it will cut jobs, you mean, in order to lower costs so that they remain more productive and keep the margins. Is that what you're implying?
Yeah.
Of course. But then for NVIDIA's case, they have the money, right? They're spending like crazy. They're investing in Intel. They're announcing $1 billion in Nokia. So I guess if you're an employee at NVIDIA, which and there's no job cuts, but actually, for example, you'd be wondering why would I be getting laid off? The same for a lot of these other tech companies when Microsoft is spending X amount of dollars on dealing with OAI or other firms like Nebius, for example, to build out data centers. Why are they cutting jobs?
Before now get to Romeo, I'll break out only 55.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Elizabeth. Oh, thank you. Good morning. Come on in. Let's go.
Three meetings and 3 stops today. We've all got the same 24 hours in the day. I know the feeling. There's just never enough time. If you've ever considered flying private jets, you have to check out One Flight's Bad.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual-purpose product. It's going to bring down inflammation, and it's also going to help with your lipid profile. By bringing down inflammation and helping reduce LDL levels and increase your HDL levels, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store, get the olive leaf extract, take it every day, drink it with filtered water, and boost up that immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. In addition, make sure you take this during the fall and the winter season. Why? Because in the fall and winter season, you need a really robust immune system.
Not just Day, Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta Platform deliver the results after the close, with Amazon and Apple following tomorrow. And right now, the S&P 500, 14 points higher. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 248 points. NASDAQ 100 up 86 points. According to the British journal, the medical journal Lancet, they have an annual report on climate and how soaring temperatures are killing 550,000 people every year around the world. That's one heat-related death every minute. So these new numbers come during a year record-setting temperatures this year around the world. They also say it's an economic hit. Lost labor productivity related to heat, according to Lancet, caused an estimated $1 trillion in income losses.
Because those numbers, are they
higher than they used to be? Are they trending higher? Do we have context?
Oh, they're trending higher.
Because the climate change deniers, I would say, give me the context there. I mean, do 500,000 people die every year because of heat since the beginning of time? I don't know the answer.
It's a steep increase, at least according to the Lancet. And as far as, whether it's, a new or fake or whatever, always follow the insurance industry and the actuaries, because they are the folks who, live or die by this stuff.
They quantify it.
They quantify it, yeah, so.
They price it, yeah.
We check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlett and Paul.
Hey, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. We're streaming live on YouTube as well. So head over to youtube.com, search Bloomberg, a local podcast, and that's where.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to break up carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids, and reduce the load on your pancreas. Super important to take every day to improve your digestion. Please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. And when you're reducing the load on your pancreas will actually last longer.
So we all know what Microsoft is. We all use Microsoft. We all get it. What is the investment story on Microsoft these days, Anurag?
So, the legacy business is still doing okay. I mean, whether it's Windows or Office, and those are good, businesses to be in because they drive a lot of free cash flow. But they're not growing as fast as they used to. So now the next phase of business is the cloud infrastructure business or just overall the cloud business. And that's seen such a big kick because of the OpenAI relationship that they have. And that has been driving growth for the past few years. And that's really the story for them right now is, how much of the lift that they're going to get on Microsoft Cloud because of all the OpenAI workloads that they are hosting.
Right. I'm so glad you go there because, of course, yesterday we did get news that OpenAI and Microsoft kind of reset their relationship. And now Microsoft will own a stake of OpenAI that's valued at $135 billion. Does that announcement show up in its results in any way tomorrow? Or I should say today?
No, I mean, it does not show up because it goes, accounting is different for that particular part of it. But for us, it's not the financial impact of that deal. It's really that Microsoft can use their technology or their models up to 2032. That to us is the most important aspect of it because frankly speaking, Microsoft has been selling their Copilot products for a number of years using OpenAI's technology and having rights to that for the next 7 years, I think is probably the most important aspect of all that happened yesterday.
So how do you, and by the way, Microsoft hit an all-time high again today. Anurag, how do you think about the competitive landscape for the cloud business that is so important for the Microsofts of the world, the Amazons of the world, the Googles and things like that? How do you think about that?
So things have gotten shaken up in the last 12 months, largely because of the AI workloads. So OpenAI being an exclusive partner for Microsoft, Microsoft was, you could say, getting most of the benefits. Till it came to a point, they had massive capacity constraints. Then at that point, I'm assuming with the help of the allowance of Microsoft, OpenAI was able to outsource some of that work to Oracle as well as to CoreWeave. Now the question is, what's going to happen that no longer Microsoft has the right of first refusal as the cloud provider? Does OpenAI go out and start knocking on Amazon's door? Because they are the one vendor right now that has not seen any AI lift compared to whether it's Microsoft or Google. Both have shown an acceleration in their growth rates in the last quarter, which we didn't see for Amazon.
Anurag, let's talk about Alphabet. I look at the year-to-date performance, and Alphabet is number 2. Yeah, after Paul Sweeney calling it Google still, old school. Yeah. Alphabet is number 2 after NVIDIA in terms of year-to-date gains, 43% advance so far this year. What's the outlook like for its results this quarter?
I think in the last quarter when they reported, they also showed a 500 basis points improvement in their cloud growth rate. And I think that's what everybody's going to hang on today and say, what is their cloud growth rate? They recently signed a very big deal with Anthropic to use Google chips. I mean, that's a huge deal, frankly. So they have the chips, they have the model, they have a cloud business. So I think investors right now are looking at this as probably one of the better ways to play AI. But when you go back, let's say a couple of years, the issue at hand was that everybody thought they're going to lose out on all their search business because of OpenAI. And I think that fears is somewhat subduing right now, but I think that cycle will keep on going as it relates to Google for some time, or Alphabet.
I mean, at Google, dude, we spent long and hard coming up with a name and ticker symbol, on the IPO. So I have to admit, Anurag, I don't know. I don't click on as many links as I do in my search. I mean, I kind of go with the AI thing that comes up at the top. I'm like, okay, I got my answer.
Paul, I do the same thing, but one of the things is I'm also spending a lot more time on YouTube. So I mean, the question is, if you have a plethora of assets, which Google has, you have a large language model, you have a cloud business, now you have chips. These guys, but I have not seen personally that level of slowdown in their search results as one would expect based on all the things we all talk about on a normal basis. So they're really doing something right where they're monetizing on whoever is going to their platform. They're doing the right thing of making sure they're pricing those products properly.
Is the overhang from the DOJ looking into them as a monopoly over? I mean, have we just kind of forgotten about that completely for Alphabet?
I think that was a very big push for them, and it's not just them. Apple got the you could say a relief from that as well, because Google pays Apple a lot of money to be the default search on iOS. I think that issue is probably behind us right now because of the OpenAI threat that Paul was just talking about. I think the regulator said, "But listen, these guys have serious competition right now." So that's partially, I think, how they got away.
All right, that's good stuff. Anurag Rana, Senior Tech Analyst, Bloomberg Intelligence. He is one of the leaders of our technology research team. It is a global team. We've got analysts all over the place.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. This will help with gene expression because vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor, so your cells will perform properly. In addition, vitamin D3 helps to get rid of cells through apoptosis if they're infected. Super important to take during the fall and the winter season. Vitamin D3 also helps to absorb calcium. So when you're doing resistance training, it's going to help you to build denser bone. Super important. And vitamin D3 helps your cardiovascular health by reducing calcium depositing around plaque formation. Take vitamin D3 every day, drink it with filtered water. All right. Someone wants me to play Al Jazeera. Well, let's play Al Jazeera and see what's playing. Oh, hockey. Can't play the hockey. Why? Because YouTube gives you strikes on copyright protection. So I can't even play Al Jazeera. Lovely. All right, let's see if there's some clips that we can play. This was 5 hours ago. Gaza destruction, demolition of homes. Israel attacks Gaza, ceasefire violations. This was 7 hours ago. Let's play that.
Have killed at least 90 Palestinians, 24 of them children, in the most significant violation of the ceasefire since it began more than 2 weeks ago. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the attacks after an Israeli soldier was killed in Rafah. Hamas has denied involvement. US President Donald Trump, who helped broker the truce, has defended the strikes, but he insists the ceasefire will hold. From the north to the south of Gaza, Israeli strikes hit homes, tents housing displaced Palestinians, and refugee camps. Rescue efforts had been underway to retrieve the bodies buried under the rubble. Okay, let's now speak to Rob Geiskin-Fold, who's a lecturer in international security at King's College London. Welcome back to Al Jazeera. Thanks for your time. From a security standpoint, how fragile is the ceasefire? Are we already seeing its collapse in real time?
Well, the ceasefire was fragile from day one. We know that both Israel and Hamas basically signed up, but under significant military or diplomatic duress. In both cases, their affirmation to signing up to the ceasefire was a yes, but and both sides are hoping that the other will make the job easy for them and break the ceasefire and be blamed by the international community. So what we're seeing is this kind of game of chicken where both sides are trying to test each other's limits, test each other's boundaries, whilst also looking for the smoking gun that gives them the excuse to violate the ceasefire. That's what we've seen Israel doing in the last 24 hours. The fact that a soldier was killed in Rafah, we still don't know by whom. We still don't know whether this was ordered by Hamas or whether this was somebody else or a Hamas cell operating independently. But Israel has seized that opportunity to violate the ceasefire because this is what they wanted all along. Though the Americans will be trying to rein them in, which is exactly what we've seen. The US saying that we expect Israel to respond, but in private they'll be telling the Israelis, we also expect you to stop.
But the thing is, when Washington says that the ceasefire is holding, despite almost 100 Palestinians in Gaza being killed, what does this reveal about how the US sees this and how the US sees stability?
The US wants quiet. As long as both parties sign up to the ceasefire and stay signed up for the ceasefire, then Trump can claim a victory and he can focus elsewhere. What we're seeing is Israel try and impose its own facts on the ground here. Israel has still not withdrawn from Gaza. It controls over 50% of the Gaza Strip directly and far more indirectly. What Israel has always been seeking to do is to basically transplant its model from Lebanon, where there is supposedly a ceasefire, but Israel has the right or the ability at least to act unilaterally against Hezbollah targets, striking regularly. It's still occupying parts of South Lebanon. So it's understandable why to many Palestinians in Gaza, this might not look like an actual ceasefire and definitely not a peace plan, but more an indefinite, prolonged occupation with no end in sight.
And looking ahead, what mechanisms, if any, could realistically enforce or monitor a ceasefire that, as you're saying, is breached almost daily? I mean, or is it just a matter of the US telling the Israelis to stop?
That's exactly what we need right now. We need the US to say to the Israelis, they may be saying that in private, but also ideally in public, to say, stop, this cannot happen. This is where many of the regional powers with whom the US enjoys close relations, countries like Turkey, countries like the Gulf states, need to step in and say to the US, who will inevitably take their eye off the ball, they're a superpower, they focus elsewhere. Trump has a very, very short attention span. This is where regional actors, regional powers need to say to the US, hey, this thing is slipping away whilst you are looking elsewhere. You need to throw your weight behind this and you need to rein in Israel.
And, despite the ceasefire, Israel, of course, maintains tight control over the airspace, the waters, the borders. Hani, our reporter, was saying that there are drones that they're hearing regularly in the skies. The army, of course, retains positions. What is the end game for Israel when it comes to Gaza?
The end game for Israel, or Netanyahu's day after, if you like, is very similar to the day before. Israel would quite like to keep the status quo, things that the way things are at the moment, where Israel controls directly around 50% of the Gaza Strip, as you say, controls far more of it through having complete closure of the airspace, the borders, maritime access, for example. Hamas would exist in a run state in around 50% of the Gaza Strip. Israel would control the other 50%, and basically that other 50% that Hamas controls or Israel doesn't directly control would be besieged, it would be blockaded, it would be deprived, and it would be starved. So this is exactly what Israel wants, for the status quo, which is supposed to be temporary, to become permanent. And as I say, that's very, very similar to the status quo we had on October the 6th, 2023. This is not a way to resolve the conflict. It's a way to perpetuate the conflict and a way to perpetuate grievances and to make further conflict inevitable.
Rob Geispenfold, you're a lecturer in international security at King's College London, speaking to us from London this hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.
I think if you're not using the van to do business travel.
Now, the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says a wave of Israeli airstrikes on Tuesday killed more than 100 people. Israel launched the attacks after accusing Hamas of killing a soldier in violation of the US brokered ceasefire. The Israeli army said it struck 30 militant commanders, but gave no details. Hospitals and rescue workers say women and children are amongst the dead. Meanwhile, Hamas has delayed handing over what it says were the remains of a deceased hostage due to the escalation. Israel says it's now resuming the truce, which President Trump has warned must not be jeopardized. Well, our correspondent Sebastian Asher in Jerusalem told us more about what preceded the Israeli strikes.
Well, what seems to have happened from the Israeli side is that they had an Israeli soldier killed down in Rafah in the South Gaza, where soldiers are working on trying to destroy the tunnel network there. And yesterday afternoon, one of the soldiers who was involved in the excavation was killed. That was blamed on Hamas. Hamas has denied this. There are also anti-tank missiles fired at troops, according to the IDF. That on top of the issues over the return of the remaining bodies of dead Israeli hostages, which Israel very much believes Hamas is stringing out, but it's not being entirely honest about the whole process, led to an announcement by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he was ordering powerful strikes to be undertaken on Gaza. We then saw that across Gaza, not just in Gaza City, not just in the center, but also in Khan Yunis, down in the south. And the casualty figures have been mounting through the night since then. The figure you quoted is from the Hamas-run health ministry and other sources there. We're still waiting to have full confirmation from hospitals of all the casualties.
Sebastian Usher there. Well, I'm joined now by Manny Fabian, military correspondent for the Times of Israel. Thanks very much for being with us. Do you think this ceasefire is going to hold? Is it under threat? Or are these the events of the last couple of days actually something that was expected?
I mean, the ceasefire is very fragile, but it is holding right now. It is these events that have been occurring, the killing of a soldier in Rafah. There was an incident just over a week ago as well, the 2 soldiers were killed in the same area, definitely testing Israel's patience. And if Israel had it its own way, I think it would have responded much more forcefully, even potentially resumed fighting in Gaza. But since this ceasefire has been sort of brokered by the US, the American administration is very much involved in the process. I think right now that's what's keeping Israel restrained and from further sort of responding or retaliating against Hamas.
And do you think that pressure on Israel will continue in the way that you describe?
I think so. I mean, we've seen Hamas sort of string out this process of releasing the bodies of the dead hostages. It still holds 13 in Gaza. It's supposed to sort of return them by now, and Israel has said that Hamas has the ability to, and it's dragging it out. But Israel is not sort of using all of its cards yet. It's not deciding to return to fighting as of now. Mainly because it's, first of all, it's interested in actually getting these bodies back, even if it takes Hamas a while to do so. But because of this American pressure, I think that will continue until Israel's patience runs out. If, for example, we see Hamas carry out some more brazen violation of the ceasefire, or even take responsibility for an attack on troops, then I think we would see Israel return to fighting. But as of now, we're not at that stage.
We are obviously seeing people express concern, countries like Turkey, very critical of the Israeli action, and reports, as I said, of women and children amongst those who've been killed this week.
So, I mean, Israel has said that in these strikes overnight and this morning targeted Hamas commanders and commanders of other armed groups in Gaza and infrastructure. We are, of course, seeing the tolls from the hospitals in the Strip and from Hamas authorities that it's over 100 dead, and there are, of course, women and children among them. But as Israel said since the beginning of the war, it only really intends to target Hamas, who is, of course, deeply embedded within the civilian population in the Strip.
Obviously, there's also the diplomatic pressure continuing to move on to phase 2. Where are we with that, as far as you know?
Right now, I haven't really heard of any major progress being made toward that. We're just at this sort of stage right now where the IDF is still deployed to most of Gaza. It's holding 53% of the territory. And the next stage is supposed to see some sort of international force deploy in Gaza and Hamas disarm, and then the army withdraw further. But I think that might be sort of quite distant at this point. It doesn't seem to be making as much progress as maybe the Americans thought. But right now, that's why Israel again is sort of maintaining the ceasefire despite the Hamas violations, despite the killing of the soldier, because the Americans, of course, want to see this deal go through all the way to the final phases that it had, of course, envisioned.
Mani Fabian, military correspondent for the Times of Israel. Thank you very much indeed.
This is just more proof that what I was saying, it's going to be a false ceasefire, and that there's going to be a curse on the world in 2026 after September 11th. Why? Because the shofar is not blown on Shabbos for Rosh Hashanah. And every time that happens, there's a curse that comes down. So it's coming. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the lignans. This will help to boost up your immune system and your endocrine system, bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. Turmeric will bring down inflammation and soak up free radicals. And ashwagandha will help you to control your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. When you stack these together, this is a very powerful stack to boost up your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system, and by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals at the cerebral level, you're helping to improve the health of your neurons. So please go to my store, get this powerful stack, take this especially for the fall and the winter season to boost up that immune system. Please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, get $5 off any order on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.